What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview. This is the Civivi Wyvern. Wyvern apparently being a name for a dragon. I think I did know that, and I just wasn't putting it together when I unboxed this. I called the scales fish scales. They're supposed to be dragon scales, so just wanted to clear that up. This knife was provided to me by the manufacturer, so as always, I'll try not to let that affect my review. It does not stay with me. It goes right on to the next reviewer, so that should be pretty easy. This is an interesting knife. If for those of you who are not aware, Civivi knives is essentially We Knives budget line. Knives in this line range anywhere from, I think, about maybe $30, $40 all the way up to about $80. And they're made with the same level of fit and finish, or nearly the same level of fit and finish as Wee's main line or their premium line. But you're getting materials that allow the price of these knives to be what it is. So instead of like titanium and carbon fiber and M390, you're getting steels like D2 and handle materials like FRN and G10. Really cool. There's a lot of companies doing that right now, but just to kind of make sure everybody's on the same page there, let's go ahead and get some measurements here. Overall length of the Wyvern coming in at just about 8 inches, just a hair under 8 inches overall. From tip to scale, you're looking at about 3.5 inches, and cutting edge, you're looking at about 3 inches. There's a pretty generous choil there. How about some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1? Rat 1 coming in at 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco Paramilitary 2? PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against another Civivi knife? This is the Civivi Statera. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Statera also coming in at the same length, 8 inches. We did that size comparison there because I'm going to do a battle between those two knives, and I wanted to give you guys a preview. Up against the Benchmade Reptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue. Ritter Hogue also coming in at 8 inches. How about the Spyderco Delica? Delica coming in at 7 inches overall. So you can see there at 8 inches, it's a pretty good size, full-size knife, but not a giant full-size knife. Let's get the weight on this guy. This thing always wants to play with me a little bit before it zeroes out. There we go. Overall weight on the Wyvern, 2.96 ounces. Let's do that again. 3 ounces. So 3 ounces on this guy. I didn't give you an example of the action. I usually do that there. So this is a flipper. Nice lightweight blade, satin finish. You can sort of shake it shut, but the blade isn't heavy enough, and the bearings that it's running on aren't quite smooth enough for it to have a free drop action, but it certainly does flip readily. Let's talk about materials on this guy. So what you're looking at on the blade is a satin finished D2 blade. You've got really nice sort of satin finished grind lines there. The lighting, you guys might notice, is a little bit different in today's video. It's because, once again, you know, imagine this. There's a thunderstorm in Kansas, and that messes with my lighting since I use natural lighting. So what I have rigged up is a floodlight that's pointed at the window in front of me, or the blinds in front of me, and it's reflecting off to give some light, but you know, basically this is what I have to work with right now, so it's a little bit less definition today. Really nice though on the blade, looks really good. Like I said, D2 steel. Moving down to the scales here, we have a dragon scale patterned FRN, which, you know, to me it's not the most pleasing thing to the eye, but some people might really like that. You have Civivi's you know, standard show side pivot there. Moving down to the back of the knife, you have a lanyard hole. Under normal circumstances, I might call that a glass breaker, but given that the backspacer is also FRN, that's definitely not what it is. On the other side, you can see on the non-show side is where you have the screws holding everything together. And they screw into the steel recessed liner underneath here. We'll get to that here in a sec. You have a pretty standard Civivi, and I think it's used by some We Knives, pocket clip. The skinny little pocket clip. Then you have the adjustment side on the female side of the scales. On the inside, you have a recessed liner lock. You can see it's locking up there solid at probably about, I don't know, 40%. Nice centered blade, no issues there. That's to be expected. On the inside here, you can see that liner is recessed on both sides, and it is actually milled out a little bit. That milling extends all the way down to the back, which is why we're getting a weight of only 3 ounces. Very, very lightweight. Talking about the action again, you do have a flipper tab that is designed really well. You've got jimping up top, so fans of the light switch, you can certainly light switch it. Fans of the push button method can do that too. I will say I also really like, on the unboxing, I didn't quite have it down where I was doing the thumb flick readily. You just need to tuck your thumb up against the rim of that hole there, which has been nicely rounded off. That chamfering or that rounding that they do, I guess. This is just nice. It's easy to get my thumb in here. It's not sharp. Everything just feels nice. I appreciate that. It's also easy to get your fingernail in on the other side. So basically, fans of like the fidgety stuff, this is kind of my go-to setup. Flipper tab and a hole, because you can do the thumb flick, you can do the reverse flick, you can do the, if you want to, you can, or if you're not working with a tabletop overview setup, you can do the, the whip, whatever that is. I don't know. Not that that's a practical way to open a knife, but basically, fidget factor is definitely there on this guy. So that's really cool. The blade shape is a classic drop point blade with a nice fuller that extends into the thumb hole here. That looks really nice, and it also looks really cool down the nose of the blade, I guess is what you'd call that. When it's shut, you can see there that swedge sort of interacts with the upper part of the swedge. It's kind of a double swedge when you have a fuller in there. You've got a thumb ramp here. You've got a nice, fairly generous area for your finger. You can kind of pull back here on this. It kind of feels like a trigger to keep your finger away from the blade, but you do still risk running it up. If you're in a full choke up position, you do still run the risk of running some of the meat of your finger up against that blade right there, but no big deal. As far as ergonomics go, you've got some slight contouring on these scales, so it really fills the palm well. There's some decent traction on this dragon scale patterning, so it's fine. Ergonomics are great. Fit and finish is great. Flipping action is great. That's what's to be expected from Civivi knives. There's really no surprise there whatsoever. Blade grind is great as well, by the way. You have a nice, super thin stock blade. I think it's actually probably comparable to the Delica in thickness. Yeah, maybe slightly thicker than the Delica, but it is actually thinner than the Ritter Hogue, which is about 125 thousandths. So you're looking at a very thin stock and a blade that's been ground very well. There's no nicks or rolls or imperfections on that edge. So that's going to slice readily. It's also going to be just fine for any type of regular EDC task you could throw at it. The knife is running on bearings. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get in there and see that. Yeah, kinda. You can kind of see in there. It's running on bearings. Yeah. Stop pin on the outside. No blade play up, down, left, or right. It's nice and solid. I'm going over things that are pretty much typical of Civivi knives. I'm going to go over some things that I do not like, because I think the design is perfect. As far as the silhouette, the aesthetics, the fit and finish, all that is great. I don't like FRN. And given the price of this knife and other knives in this caliber, what we're seeing in this price range right now, I don't like FRN in this price range. And, it used to be I was like, FRN, if it's under 75 bucks or under 100 bucks, I used to say that. But now when I can get G10 for this price range, I don't want to see FRN. And I just did this video recently where I talked about the strength of FRN versus the strength of G10, and I admitted that FRN is nearly as strong as G10. They're both very strong. So in terms of durability, and I'll probably say this every time I talk about FRN, in terms of durability, I do trust FRN. But I don't like it. I don't like how it feels. It makes this knife feel kind of like a toy. And all, super hollowed out or recessed liner versions of knives, that are, combined with FRN, they feel like toys. And I don't like that, This honestly feels like something that might have come out of like a clamshell package or some sort of, plastic display pack at Walmart. And I just don't like that. It's obviously a quality piece, but it feels cheap, and that's why I have a bias against it. Like I said, the liners underneath, everything's great. People who are fans of ultra lightweight designs, they don't care about the cheap feeling of FRN. you know, and they like to have that benefit there of weight reduction, you know, you're really going to like this, and you can totally ignore what I'm saying. But that's just me. I also am not a big fan of the aesthetics of the fish scale pattern. There are two versions of this knife that I'm aware of. There's this OD green version, and then there's a black version. Both versions have the same color backspacer as the scales. And in this case, it just looks like a bunch, it looks like a bowl of peas. You know, just kind of all just mashed together. It's too much, all one thing. I would have preferred, you know, if it had to be FRN, maybe just a different color of plastic in there for the backspacer. Maybe a black or a dark gray, something to match, you know, the color of the hardware or the pocket clip would have been real nice there, but this looks gross. I don't like that aesthetically. So for 40, it's like $49.50 on Blade HQ. I think the black one, at the time of this video, the black one is still available. You're getting an excellent blade. Satin finished, D2 blade, looks nice, functions great, has good ergonomics, a great place for your thumb, a great place for your index finger. It's got the fidget factor, you know, it's going to perform well. But you're getting FRN in an ugly pattern that's just kind of mashed in there. And, you know, that's a combination of two things. An aesthetic, subjective thing, and also like a feeling of quality that is also subjective to different people's opinions. In my opinion, for $50, I'm not okay with that. I would rather have G10, and I honestly think they could have just put G10 on this knife and put a G10 backspacer that was different, and I'd even accepted the weird pattern here, because it does provide enough traction to where I would consider it functional. You know, and some people are going to like the aesthetics of it. But I just don't like FRN. That's just my opinion. Here's a weird thing. This is another one of those knives. It's a lot like the Benchmade Bug Out, where, you know, my reasons for not liking it are not enough to stop me from recommending it and saying, you know, yeah, it's a good knife. You know, yeah, this is a recommendable knife. And as far as like the rest of the knife world goes, I think FRN is still acceptable by most people in this price range. So I am going to recommend this knife. And I think, honestly, functionally, you know, looking at this as a tool, do I think it's going to hold up? Yeah, 100%. There's no reason to not trust this thing. My bias are what's making me say negative things about it. So if you're looking at this knife, you don't mind FRN, and you like how this knife looks, yeah, it's going to be worth the $49.50 to you, definitely. For me, there are definitely going to be other knives in front of it that are slightly more expensive or the same price that come in G10 that I would recommend first, but this is still something I could recommend to people. You know, so despite the negative things that I am saying, I still have to consider, like, hey, not everybody thinks exactly like me. This is still a recommendable knife. It's still going to go on my playlist of my most recommended knives that have come through my hands. Just be aware, you know, my biggest thing with this knife is picking it up. It feels cheap. It's too light, in combination with the scales, you know, that don't have the same hollow feeling as the Benchmade Bug Out, but the Bug Out doesn't have the Bug Out's got like a 25% liner in there. These have full recessed steel liners, so it doesn't sound that cheap. It just feels cheap. You know, that's really the only drawback of that. So, anyways, guys, that is truthfully going to be all that I have to say about this knife. Oh yeah, let's talk about pocket clip positions real quick. Sometimes I skip that. There's only one pocket clip position for this guy, and that's going to be tip up, right hand only. You do not have a mountable. You don't have a mountable position for the pocket clip for left-handed carry, which is kind of a bummer. They should have at least put it on the other side. And there's nothing for people who like tip down, which I think is appropriate on a flipper. But you know, that's definitely going to bum some people out. Cool knife. Would have liked it a lot more if it was like 30 to 35 bucks. I think that's more like where my brain's like, yeah, okay, FRN, that's fine. You know, D2 on FRN at like, man, if this was like 35 bucks, yeah, that'd be super cool. That'd be an awesome knife. But, you know, it's hard because it's like we keep taking these companies and like pushing them further and further back. You know, all these companies competing, trying to get like the best knife for the least amount of money and the best aesthetics and the flipping action that we want, the ergonomics that we want, you know, all that. And we're like, yeah, it'd be great, but can you charge us less money for it? As a reviewer, I have to keep that in mind. You know, it's like, I'm sure these companies are asking us, like, what more do you want from us? You know, like, truthfully, taking a step back and looking at this thing, this is incredible. I mean, yeah, I don't like FRN, but man, like, the detent's tuned great. The flipping action is awesome. It's super smooth. It has this, like, totally accessible and functional thumb hole. Whoops, while I'm talking about that, I messed it up. I caught my finger on it back here. The handle ergonomics are great. I mean, there's so many good things to say about it, and I'm like, I wouldn't pay that much money for it because it's got FRN, even though FRN's proven to be plenty tough. So taking a step back and, you know, just taking myself less seriously, yeah, this is really incredible. It's awesome that Civivi offers knives like this, you know, of this caliber for this price range. Sure, it'd be great if it was less expensive, but this is a great knife, and for those reasons, you know, just sort of adding more detail to what I was saying, yes, I can definitely recommend this knife. So, anyways, guys, that's going to be pretty much it for today's video. If you enjoyed it or at least found it entertaining, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so please check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then please subscribe to my channel because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.